Get out. Right now. Get out of line, you damn black man.
Sir,
Did I tell you to speak? Shut your filthy mouth.
I just need...
What do you need to do? You need to get out of my airport before I drag you out!
I have a plane ticket.
A plane ticket. Yes! And I am the Pope! Lie down. Face down. Right now!
And the officer tightened his grip around his throat, his knee pressed down on his spine, until his glasses shattered on the marble floor and his body stopped moving. But this was what the officer hadn't anticipated. When they opened the man's briefcase, when he read United States federal judge, he nearly fainted on the spot. What happened next ended everything he had ever had. 4:32 in the morning, Buckhead, Atlanta. The house sat at the end of a quiet oak-lined street. Nothing flashy, no iron gates, just a two-story brick colonial with a porch light left on and azaleas lining the walkway. Crickets still humming in the dark, dew sitting on the grass like tiny glass beads. Inside, Leonard Foster was already awake. He moved through the hallway in bare feet. The hardwood creaked beneath him. On the wall hung a row of framed photographs. His law school graduation at Howard University, cap tilted the way his mother liked it. His swearing-in ceremony at the federal courthouse, right hand raised, left on the Bible. A family portrait, him, his wife Denise, and their two grown daughters in white linen on a beach somewhere warm. He passed them without looking. He'd seen them 1,000 times. But those photos told a story. A kid from Southeast D.C. who made it all the way to the federal bench. In the kitchen, coffee was already brewing. Dark roast filled the room, thick and warm. Leonard poured a cup, black, no sugar, and leaned against the counter. His phone buzzed. A draft judicial opinion. 300 pages on a civil rights case involving a police department in rural Alabama. He scrolled through it while the coffee cooled. The irony of what was about to happen to him would not be lost on anyone. Denise came downstairs in a robe, hair wrapped, eyes half open. "You eating anything? I'll grab something at the gate. That means you won't eat." He smiled, kissed her forehead. "I promise." She handed him a granola bar. He pocketed it without arguing. 31 years of marriage had taught him which battles to fight. Today was simple. Fly to D.C., attend a judicial conference on sentencing reform, fly back Thursday. He'd done this trip 50 times. He grabbed his carry-on from the closet. Inside, a laptop, a leather-bound notebook full of case notes, a toiletry kit, and a $3,000 Tom Ford suit in a garment bag. Pressed. Perfect. But today he dressed down. Navy cashmere hoodie, dark jeans, clean white sneakers, reading glasses tucked into his collar. He looked like a college professor on vacation. He looked like anybody. And his judicial ID badge? He left it in the front pocket of his briefcase, zipped shut. On purpose. Leonard Foster didn't like pulling rank. Never had. He believed a man should be treated with basic respect, whether he wore a robe or a hoodie. That dignity wasn't earned with a title. It was something you were born with. That belief was about to be shattered. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, 6:15 in the morning. The busiest airport in the world was waking up. The terminal hummed with rolling suitcases on polished floors. The smell of Cinnabon mixed with jet fuel bleeding through the ventilation. A janitor pushed a mop in long, slow arcs near the restrooms. The PA system chimed every 30 seconds. Flight updates, gate changes, final boarding calls. A mechanical heartbeat that never stopped. Near TSA Checkpoint B, Officer Brett Callahan leaned against a concrete pillar with his arms crossed. 38 years old. 6'1", broad shoulders, buzz cut. Oakley sunglasses pushed up on his forehead even though he was indoors. The kind of man who took up more space than he needed and enjoyed it. He was talking to his partner, Officer Tony Russo. But Russo wasn't listening. He was watching the line, doing his job. Brett wasn't watching the line. Brett was scanning it. There's a difference. One is duty. The other is hunting. A Middle Eastern family walked past. Mother in a hijab, father carrying a toddler. Brett nudged Russo and muttered something about extra screening. Russo didn't laugh, just looked the other direction. Brett laughed enough for both of them. His radio crackled. Captain Elaine Prescott's voice. All units, elevated awareness protocol through end of shift. Stay sharp. Brett clicked his radio. Copy that, Cap. Then he turned back to the crowd, eyes moving, jaw tight, looking for someone. What the passengers didn't know, what none of them could have known, was that Brett Callahan had 3 excessive force complaints in the past 18 months. All 3 involved passengers of color. All 3 were administratively resolved. No suspension, no retraining, no consequences. Brett had learned one lesson from those complaints. He could do whatever he wanted and nothing would happen. Until today. Leonard walked through the terminal at an easy pace, carry-on rolling behind him, phone in his left hand, reading glasses perched low on his nose. He was scrolling through a draft judicial opinion, a case about a sheriff's department that had been targeting black motorists for years. The details were ugly, familiar. The kind of case that made him tired in his bones, but kept him on the bench every single morning. He joined the TSA pre-check line, about 15 people ahead of him. He set his bag upright, slipped his phone into his hoodie pocket, and waited. Just waited, like every other passenger in that terminal. That's when Brett Callahan saw him. It wasn't random. It wasn't intuition or training or instinct. Brett's eyes had been sweeping the line for 10 minutes, skipping over every white face, every blonde ponytail, every business suit. His gaze landed on Leonard the way a searchlight lands on an escaped prisoner. Tall, black, hoodie. 3 words. That was the entire basis. Brett pushed off the pillar and walked toward the line. Russo noticed and straightened up. "What are you doing?" "My job," Brett said without looking back. He cut through the rope barrier and walked straight up to Leonard. Got close enough that Leonard could smell the stale coffee on his breath and the cheap cologne clinging to his collar. "You, step out of line." Leonard looked up from his phone, calm, unhurried. He took off his reading glasses and tucked them into his collar. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Step out. Now." Leonard glanced around. A woman behind him pulled her purse tighter. A man in a business suit suddenly found his shoes very interesting. A little girl holding her mother's hand stared with wide, confused eyes. Nobody said a word. Leonard stepped out of line. "Is there a problem, officer?" Brett didn't answer. Instead, he looked Leonard up and down, slowly, deliberately, the way you'd examine something stuck to the bottom of your shoe. "Where are you headed?" "Washington, D.C. "What for?" "A conference." "What kind of conference?" "A judicial conference." Brett's eyebrows went up. Then came the smirk. The slow, poisonous smirk that started at the corner of his mouth and spread across his face like an oil spill on clean water. "A judicial conference," he repeated, loud enough for the people in line to hear. "You, at a judicial conference." Leonard said nothing. "What are you, some kind of lawyer?" "Something like that." Brett snorted, a short, ugly sound from deep in his chest. He turned toward Russo, who was standing 6 feet back with his arms folded tight. "You hear that, Russo? This guy says he's a lawyer." He said the word the way someone might say cockroach. Russo didn't respond. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were fixed on the floor. Brett turned back. "Let me see your ID." Leonard reached into his back pocket slowly and handed over his Georgia driver's license. Brett snatched it like he was taking a toy from a child, held it up close, squinted at it like he was hunting for a forgery. "Leonard Foster," he read aloud, making a show of it. "Buckhead address. That's a nice neighborhood. Real nice neighborhood for a guy dressed like this." Leonard let that pass. Didn't react. Didn't blink. 30 years on the bench had taught him how to keep every emotion locked behind his eyes. He'd sat across from murderers and kept his composure. He could handle a cop with a badge and an ego. Brett keyed his radio. "Dispatch running a name. Leonard Foster, Georgia license." He read out the number slowly, making Leonard stand there like a suspect while the entire line watched. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Each second stretching like a rubber band pulled to its limit. The radio crackled back. Clear. No warrants, no flags, no record. Completely clean. Not even a parking ticket. A reasonable officer would have handed the license back and walked away. A decent human being would have apologized for the trouble. Brett did neither. He held the license between two fingers and tapped it against his palm. Slowly, rhythmically. The performance of a man who had already decided what was going to happen, but wanted to savor the buildup. Clean ID doesn't mean clean intentions. "I'm going to need to check your bag." Something shifted in Leonard's eyes. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to recognition. He'd seen this at traffic stops in his 20s, at store entrances in his 30s, at country clubs in his 40s. He'd read about it in case files for 3 decades. The script never changed. Only the uniform. Only the city. "Officer, my ID came back clean. I've answered your questions. I'd like to get back in line and make my flight." Brett stepped closer. Close enough that their chests were almost touching. He dropped his voice to that low, threatening register that every bully masters by middle school. "You don't tell me when we're done. I tell you when we're done. You understand that?" Leonard held his gaze, didn't blink, didn't give him one single inch. "I understand you, officer." "Good. Then put your bag on the floor. Step back, and keep your mouth shut." Leonard set his carry-on down, stepped back, hands visible, every movement calm, measured, precise. He was giving this man absolutely nothing to work with, and it was driving Brett insane. Because men like Brett Callahan don't just want compliance, they want fear. They want trembling hands, darting eyes, a stammered, "Yes, sir." They want you to shrink, to fold, to become small enough to fit inside the box they've already built for you in their head. Leonard Foster was not becoming small. He stood at his full height, 6'2", and looked at Brett with an expression that wasn't defiance. It was something far worse. It was patience. The unshakable patience of a man who had spent his career watching people like Brett sit in the defendant's chair. Brett crouched down and yanked the zipper. Didn't ask permission. Didn't explain what he was looking for. Just started pulling things out and dropping them on the tile. The laptop came first, set down without care. Then the toiletry kit. Then the leather-bound notebook, weeks of legal analysis, tossed aside like junk mail. Then he found the garment bag. He pulled it out, unzipped it, and shook the suit free. The Tom Ford suit. Hand-stitched Italian wool, charcoal gray. The suit Leonard was going to wear to address 200 federal judges tomorrow, crumpled on the dirty airport floor. A woman in line gasped. Brett looked at the suit on the ground, looked at Leonard, and smiled. Wide, satisfied, ugly. "Nice suit. Where'd you steal it?" Leonard's eyes dropped to the suit on the tile. A single muscle in his jaw twitched, the only crack in his composure. He breathed in, let it out through his nose. "Officer, that suit is not relevant to any security concern. I'd like to pick it up." "Did I say you could touch anything? Stand still." "I'm asking you respectfully, and I'm telling you, stand still." The TSA line had stopped moving entirely. People were staring openly, some with discomfort, some with simmering anger. A few had phones raised. One of them, a white woman in her 40s with a teenage daughter, had been recording for 2 full minutes. Her name was Sandra Moore, and she hadn't blinked. Her daughter tugged her sleeve. "Mom, please, let's go." Sandra didn't move. "No, someone needs to see this." She kept the camera steady, hands trembling, but the frame held. Rousseau stepped forward, put a hand on Brett's shoulder, voice low, almost pleading. "Brett, his record's clean. Maybe we should just—" Brett shrugged the hand off like a fly on raw meat. "Back off, Rousseau. I got this." Rousseau dropped his hand, stepped back. His face said everything his mouth wouldn't. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong. And he did nothing. Leonard stood motionless, suit crumpled on the floor, belongings scattered on dirty tile. His dignity being stripped away layer by layer in front of strangers too scared, too uncomfortable, or too conditioned to say a single word. And the worst part? This wasn't new to him. The humiliation wasn't new. The suspicion wasn't new. The quiet, systematic dismantling of a man's humanity by someone with a badge and an attitude, none of it was new. The only thing new was what was coming next. Brett wasn't done. He was just getting started. He stood up from the carry-on and looked at Leonard's belongings scattered across the floor. Laptop, toiletry kit, notebook, suit. Like a dog admiring the mess it just made. Then he kicked the garment bag to the side with the toe of his boot. Casually, like it was garbage somebody left on the sidewalk. "Arms out. Spread your legs." "Officer, you've already checked my ID. You've searched my bag. There's no reason." "I said arms out. You got hearing problems, or you just like making things harder for yourself?" Leonard raised his arms. Slowly. Palms open. Fingers spread. He'd been through this before. Not as a judge. As a black man in America. Brett stepped behind him and started the pat-down. But this wasn't a pat-down. This was a performance. A show for an audience of one. Himself. He ran his hands down Leonard's sides hard enough to leave marks. Squeezed his pockets like he was trying to crush whatever was inside. Yanked the lining of his hoodie so hard a stitch popped. Then he reached into the front pocket and pulled out the granola bar Denise had given him an hour ago. Held it up between 2 fingers like evidence. "What's this?" "A granola bar." "I can see it's a granola bar. Why's it in your pocket?" "Because my wife gave it to me." "Your wife?" Brett turned it over in his hand, examining it, making a production out of nothing. Then he tossed it on the floor next to the crumpled Tom Ford suit. "Right, your wife." The way he said it, the way his mouth twisted around the word wife, like the idea of this man having a wife, having a home, having a life, was something he refused to accept. He patted down Leonard's legs, inner thighs, ankles, took his time, made it slow, made it humiliating. A TSA agent behind the checkpoint glass watched through the window, mouth open, frozen between duty and disbelief. The pat-down found nothing. Of course it found nothing. There was never going to be anything to find. But Brett still wasn't done. He picked up the leather-bound notebook again, opened it slowly, and started reading pages out loud. Pursuant to Section 1983, the plaintiff alleges a pattern of discriminatory... Brett looked up, laughed. A sharp, barking laugh. What is this? You writing a book? Those are privileged legal documents. You are not authorized to read them. Privileged? Brett held the notebook higher, ran his thumb across Leonard's handwriting like he was smearing it. Nothing about you is privileged, pal. Not in my terminal. Leonard's voice dropped. Quiet. Controlled. But something cold had entered it. Officer, put the notebook down. Brett looked at him, and for a half-second, something flickered behind his eyes. Something that might have been doubt. The faintest recognition that this man was not who he assumed. But ego is louder than instinct, and Brett's ego was a roar. He held the notebook out to the side, arm extended, like a schoolyard bully dangling a kid's lunch money. You want it? Come get it. Leonard didn't move, didn't reach, just stared at Brett with those calm, unblinking eyes. The eyes of a man who had sentenced killers and never flinched. Brett's smirk faltered. He dropped the notebook on the floor, pages bent, spine cracked. Then something else caught his eye. The briefcase. Leonard's leather briefcase, still zipped, sitting upright next to the carry-on, untouched. What's in there? Personal documents. Open it. No. The word landed like a gunshot. Every head within 30 feet turned. Conversation stopped. Even the PA system seemed to hold its breath. Brett's face went red. Not pink. Red. The kind that starts at the collar and climbs like a brush fire. What did you just say to me? I said no. You have no probable cause, no warrant, no legal basis to search that briefcase. I do not consent. Brett stepped forward until his face was 6 inches from Leonard's. Close enough to feel the heat. Close enough to smell the fury coming off him like gasoline fumes. You think you know the law? You think you can stand in my airport and tell me what I can and can't do? I'm telling you what the Fourth Amendment says, officer. The Fourth Amendment. Brett's lip curled. I am real tired of guys like you throwing around big words you picked up on the internet. You're not a lawyer. You're not a judge. You're just another... He stopped himself, caught the word between his teeth. But everyone heard it. Every phone recording, every camera watching. The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire already burning. Leonard didn't fill the silence. He let it rot in the open where everyone could smell it. Brett grabbed Leonard's left wrist, fingers digging into the tendons, twisted it behind his back with a sharp, practiced jerk. That's it. You're done. Detained for noncompliance and obstruction. I haven't obstructed anything. I'm exercising my constitutional... Shut up. Brett twisted harder. Leonard's shoulder torqued at an angle shoulders aren't designed to reach. Pain shot through his arm, hot and electric. But he didn't cry out. Clenched his jaw so hard, his teeth nearly cracked. Brett shoved him forward. Leonard stumbled. His knee hit the tile. A dull, heavy thud. His reading glasses flew from his collar and skittered across the marble. One lens cracked clean down the middle. A thin, sharp sound that in the sudden silence was deafening. Then Brett did it. He wrapped his right arm around Leonard's throat from behind, locked it with his left hand, bicep against one side, forearm against the other, and squeezed. A chokehold, full pressure, in the middle of an airport lobby, in front of 200 people. Leonard's hands came up, fingers clawing at Brett's forearm, nails scraping polyester, feet scrambling on smooth marble, sneakers squeaking, mouth open wide but no sound came out, no air came in. His face changed color, brown to red, red to dark purple. The veins in his temples bulged. His eyes went wide, then wider, the whites turning pink as blood vessels burst one by one. A child screamed somewhere behind them, high, piercing, terrified. The kind of scream that makes every parent within 100 feet stop breathing. Sandra Moore was still filming, tears streaming down her face, phone shaking, but she refused to lower it. Her daughter was pressed against her back, face buried in her jacket, sobbing. Sandra screamed, "You're killing him! Let go! He can't breathe!" Other voices rose. A man shouted, "Get off him! He's not resisting!" A woman yelled, "Call 911!" An elderly man pointed his cane and roared, "This is assault, and every one of us is watching." Russo grabbed Brett's shoulder with both hands. "Brett, ease up! You're going to kill him!" Brett held on. 3 more seconds. 4, 5, 6. Each one a lifetime. Leonard's hands went limp. His arms dropped like ropes cut from a mast. His eyes rolled upward until only the whites showed. His body sagged, dead weight, held up only by the arm crushing his throat. Then Brett let go. Leonard collapsed face first onto cold marble. His cheek hit the floor with a wet, heavy sound. A thin line of saliva ran from his mouth. His chest heaved in desperate, ragged gasps. Each breath sounded like gravel dragged through a pipe, like a man drowning on dry land. Brett wasn't even breathing hard. He stood over Leonard, pulled a zip tie from his belt, grabbed both limp wrists, wrists that had signed federal warrants, wrists that had held his daughters as babies, and cinched them behind his back. The plastic bit into skin, drew thin red lines on each wrist. He keyed his radio, voice flat, bored. "Dispatch, combative individual restrained at checkpoint B, requesting backup and supervisor," Leonard whispered from the floor. Barely there. Crushed gravel and broken air. "I want to speak to your supervisor." Brett looked down at him, tilted his head, and laughed. The quiet, satisfied laugh of a man who believed he had won. "Yeah? Get in line, buddy." He planted his boot 3 inches from Leonard's face, close enough to see dried mud on the sole, close enough to smell rubber and floor wax. The boot stayed there, a silent, deliberate message. You are nothing. The terminal had gone still. Cinnabon still drifted. The PA still chimed. Somewhere, a gate agent announced boarding for a Delta flight to LaGuardia. The world kept turning. But in this 10-foot circle of cold marble, a man lay zip-tied and gasping. Glasses shattered, suit crumpled, dignity ground into the floor by a boot that had no business being there. 200 people watched, some recording, some crying, some frozen, some looking away because it was easier than looking at the truth. Nobody moved to help. Not yet. 3 minutes. That's how long Leonard Foster lay on that floor before Captain Elaine Prescott arrived. 3 minutes of cold marble against his cheek. 3 minutes of plastic cutting into his wrists. 3 minutes of Brett Callahan's boot planted next to his face like a flag in conquered territory. Then the sound of hard-soled shoes, fast, purposeful. Captain Prescott rounded the corner and stopped. 20-year veteran, silver hair pulled tight, a face that had seen bomb threats and terminal evacuations and never cracked. She took in the scene in 2 seconds. A black man, zip-tied on the floor, phones raised everywhere. Her officer standing over the body like a hunter over a kill. Her jaw tightened so hard the muscles in her neck jumped. "Callahan, report. Now." Brett straightened up, tried to put authority back in his voice, but it came out thin. Suspect was belligerent during a routine check, Captain. Refused a lawful search. Got physical. I had to restrain him. Got physical how? He reached for me. I perceived a threat, and you perceived a threat. Prescott's voice was dead flat. The kind of flat that comes right before an explosion. From a man with no weapons, no warrants, and no record. She turned away from him, crouched down next to Leonard. Her knee touched cold marble. She looked at his face, the swollen throat, the burst blood vessels in his eyes, the saliva drying on his chin. "Sir, can you hear me? What's your name?" Leonard's voice came from somewhere deep, somewhere damaged. Each word cost him. "My name is Leonard Foster." A breath that rattled in his chest. "I am a United States District Judge for the Northern District of Georgia." The words fell into the terminal like stones into still water. "My judicial credentials are in the front pocket of the briefcase your officer dumped on the floor." Prescott stood slowly, walked to the briefcase. Every eye followed her, every camera tracked her. The only sound was her heels on marble and the distant hum of ventilation. She unzipped the front pocket, reached inside. Her hand came out holding a leather credential wallet. She opened it. Inside, a federal judicial ID with Leonard Foster's photograph. A commission certificate embossed with the seal of the United States District Court. And a laminated copy of his oath of office, signed by the President of the United States. Prescott stared at the credentials. Her thumb ran across the presidential seal. She looked at Leonard on the floor, at the zip ties, at the boot prints near his face. Then she looked at Brett Callahan. And Brett saw it. He saw the credential wallet, the gold seal catching fluorescent light, the photograph, and the words, "United States Federal Judge," in block letters. The color left his face, not slowly, all at once, like someone pulled a plug at the base of his skull and drained every drop of blood in 2 seconds. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. His hands, the same hands that had choked a federal judge unconscious, started shaking. Not trembling, shaking. The way a man's body shakes when it understands something his brain hasn't caught up to yet. His knees buckled. Russo lunged forward and grabbed his arm. Brett's eyes were locked on the credential wallet like it was a loaded gun pointed at his chest. He looked like he was going to vomit. He looked like he was going to faint. He looked like a man watching his entire life collapse into a sinkhole beneath his feet. Prescott's voice cut through the silence. Low, lethal. "Get him off the floor. Now." Nobody moved. "Cut those zip ties. Now." Russo scrambled, dropped to his knees, sliced through the plastic. The zip ties fell away. Red welts circled Leonard's wrists like bracelets made of blood. He helped Leonard up, carefully, gently, the way you'd help someone out of a car wreck. Leonard stood slowly, brushed dust off his hoodie with hands that were perfectly steady, touched his throat, red, swollen, already bruising in the shape of fingers. He looked down, found his glasses on the floor, picked them up. One lens cracked, one arm bent. He examined them for a moment, put them in his pocket. Then he turned to Brett, not with anger, not with rage, with something far more devastating. Authority. The full, quiet, immovable authority of a man who held the power of the federal bench, a man whose signature carried the weight of the Constitution. He spoke quietly, but every word landed like a hammer on an anvil. "Officer, I want your name, your badge number, and the name of your department's legal counsel. You will be hearing from me, not as a citizen filing a complaint, as a federal judge who was just choked unconscious and zip-tied on the floor of an American airport. Brett's lips moved. His voice cracked like dry wood. Your Honor, I didn't know. Leonard raised one hand, palm forward, and Brett stopped talking like someone had cut his vocal cords. Don't. Not one word. 200 people. Not a single sound. Not a cough. Not a whisper. Just a federal judge standing tall in a dusty hoodie. And a cop who couldn't feel his legs. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Then Brett broke it, the way drowning men break the surface. Desperate. Gasping. Captain, listen, it was a misunderstanding. He matched a profile. I was doing my job. How was I supposed to know he was a what? Prescott turned on him. Slow, the way a gun turret turns. A judge? So if he wasn't a judge, this would be fine. If he was a janitor, you'd be justified? Brett opened his mouth, closed it. Nothing useful came out. That man could have been anyone, Callahan. A teacher, a plumber, a father picking up his kid, and you choked him unconscious on my floor. She stepped closer, dropped her voice, but everyone heard every syllable. Badge. Now. Brett's hand went to his chest. His fingers touched the metal like it was the last thing keeping him alive. Captain, please, I was just doing a routine badge. And your weapon. Now. His hands shook as he unclipped the badge. The pin scraped against his shirt, a small metallic sound. Then the holster. He pulled the service weapon out and held it to Prescott handle first. She took both without looking, handed them to Russo. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. Escorted from this terminal. You will not speak to anyone on the way out. Brett nodded, chin trembling. The big man, the loud man, the man who had laughed with his boot 3 inches from Leonard's face. Gone. In his place stood something hollow, something that looked like it might collapse if you blew on it. Prescott turned away from him. She was done. Within minutes, the airport authority director arrived. Gray suit, face tight with the particular panic of a man who just learned his facility was about to be on every news channel in the country. Judge Foster, I am so deeply sorry. On behalf of the entire airport authority, Leonard raised a hand. Instant silence. I don't need apologies. I don't need a lounge. I don't need a first-class upgrade. He paused. I need one thing. Every second of security footage from this area for the past hour. Every angle, every camera, preserved and copied. The director nodded so fast his glasses slipped. Of course, Your Honor. Within the hour, Leonard accepted a bottle of water from a TSA agent, pressed it against his throat, the cold against the swelling, condensation dripping down his fingers. He closed his eyes for 2 seconds. Just 2. That's when Sandra Moore approached. She walked up slowly, phone still in her hand, face still wet with tears. Her daughter hung back, watching with red-rimmed eyes. Sir, my name is Sandra Moore. I recorded everything, from the beginning. She turned the phone screen toward Leonard. He watched 15 seconds. Himself on the floor. Brett's arm around his throat. Sandra screaming in the background. He looked away. Thank you, he said quietly. I'm so sorry. I should have done more. You did exactly what needed to be done. You didn't look away. He paused. Most people looked away. Sandra wiped her eyes. What can I do? Keep that video. Don't delete it. Don't edit it. When the time comes, and it will come, be willing to show it." Sandra nodded. Leonard looked at her for a long moment, then said something she would remember for the rest of her life. "You didn't save me today, but you saved the truth. Sometimes that matters more." At the far end of the terminal, Brett Callahan was being escorted toward the staff exit by 2 airport security officers. He walked between them, with his head down, hands empty, no badge, no gun, no authority. He passed the same crowd that had watched him choke a man 5 minutes ago. Nobody looked at him with sympathy. Nobody looked at him with anger. They just looked away. The same way people look away from a car wreck once the sirens arrive. He walked through the staff door. It closed behind him with a heavy, mechanical click. And just like that, Brett Callahan was gone. But his problems were just beginning. Sandra Moore posted the video at 9:47 that evening. She sat on her hotel bed in D.C. and uploaded it with a caption that took 20 minutes to write and 10 seconds to go viral. Federal judge choked by airport cop for flying while black. Within 1 hour, 200,000 views. Within 6, 2 million. Within 24, 12 million. And climbing. The internet did what the internet does. It froze on the chokehold, frame by frame. It zoomed on the glasses shattering. It circled the boot planted 3 inches from a federal judge's face. It captured the exact moment Leonard's eyes rolled back. Someone turned that frame into a mural. CNN ran it at the top of the hour. MSNBC broke into programming. Fox covered it from the law enforcement angle. But even their own analysts couldn't defend what the video showed. Because the video didn't lie. It just showed a man being choked on a floor for the crime of standing in a line. By morning, hashtags exploded. Hashtag justice for Foster. Hashtag airport chokehold. Hashtag flying while black. Every one of them trending. Everyone attached to that 14-second clip of Brett Callahan's arm around Leonard Foster's throat. 3 days later, 2 investigations were formally announced. The Atlanta Police Department's Airport Division opened a full internal review. They pulled 14 angles of security footage, details Sandra's phone hadn't captured. One camera showed Brett kicking the garment bag. Another showed him spitting on the floor. A third captured the moment Russo grabbed Brett's shoulder and Brett shrugged him off. The second investigation was federal. The FBI's Civil Rights Division opened a case under Title 18, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. Agents interviewed Sandra, Russo, and 11 other witnesses. They reviewed Leonard's medical records, throat bruising consistent with sustained compression, petechial hemorrhaging in both eyes, ligament strain in the left shoulder. Attorney General Nathan Cole made a public statement, broadcast live on every major network. He didn't hedge. No American, regardless of title or status, should be subjected to that kind of treatment because of the color of their skin. Brett Callahan was arrested the following Tuesday, 7:15 in the morning. 2 FBI agents at his apartment door in Marietta. Handcuffs. Unmarked sedan. The charges? Assault under color of law. Deprivation of civil rights. Simple assault under Georgia state law. His mugshot was on every front page by noon. But the arrest was just the beginning. Because once the spotlight hit Brett, it didn't stop at the airport. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution dug into his record. The 3 prior complaints were published in full. Incident 1, 2023. A 20-year-old black college student named Devin Adams slammed into a wall during a, quote, random check, traveling home for Thanksgiving. 3.8 GPA. Carry-on full of dirty laundry. Brett claimed he, quote, made a sudden movement. Internal review found, quote, no policy violation. Devin never filed a lawsuit. He told reporters he didn't think anyone would believe him. Incident 2, 2024. A Latino businessman named Carlos Vega detained 45 minutes, searched twice, missed his connecting flight. Brett told him he fit a description. There was no description, no suspect, no case. Complaint closed in 11 days. Incident 3, 2025. A 68-year-old black grandmother named Dorothy Palmer pulled from the wheelchair line and searched aggressively in front of her grandchildren. Brett said she was acting suspicious. She was acting like a 68-year-old woman in a wheelchair. Complaint went nowhere. 3 incidents, 3 people of color. 3 times the system looked the other way. Until it couldn't. The trial began 4 months later. Federal Courthouse, Atlanta. The same building where Leonard normally presided. He was recused. But the building knew him. The marble floors knew the sound of his shoes. The prosecution was surgical. Sandra's video, 14 angles of security footage, medical records with photographs of bruising, burst blood vessels, zip tie welts. And Russo's testimony, devastating in its simplicity. He told the jury he grabbed Brett's shoulder. He told them Brett shrugged him off. He told them he heard Leonard gasping. Then he said the sentence that would be quoted in every article about the trial. I knew it was wrong, and I stood there. The defense tried everything. Brett acted within training. Brett perceived a genuine threat. Split-second decision. The attorney used reasonable officer 14 times in closing arguments. The jury didn't buy it. 3 hours and 11 minutes of deliberation. The foreperson, a retired schoolteacher from Decatur, read the verdict without emotion. Guilty. On all counts. Leonard sat in the gallery in a gray suit. Not the Tom Ford. That one was ruined. He closed his eyes. Denise squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. 8 years in federal prison. Permanent ban from law enforcement. Mandatory restitution. Brett stood in the defendant's chair, said nothing when the sentence was read, just stared at the table with empty eyes. Outside the courthouse, the aftermath fell like dominoes. The airport police department overhauled its use of force policy. Body cameras, mandatory for every officer. An independent civilian review board established for all future complaints. Devin Adams, Carlos Vega, and Dorothy Palmer filed civil suits. All 3 settled within months. Apologies were public. Leonard filed his own civil suit. The city settled for an undisclosed amount. He donated every dollar to a legal defense fund for victims of police misconduct. Every single dollar. And a bill was introduced in the Georgia State Legislature, drafted by a freshman representative who watched Sandra's video at 2 a.m. and couldn't sleep. The bill was called the Foster Act. Body cameras for all airport law enforcement. Independent review of all use of force incidents. Automatic suspension, without pay, for any officer who applied a chokehold on a civilian. It passed with bipartisan support. Justice doesn't always come fast. It doesn't always come clean. But sometimes, when the camera is steady, when the witness doesn't look away, when the truth is too loud to bury, it comes. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It roars. 6 months later, Atlanta, Georgia. Leonard Foster walked through the doors of the federal courthouse at 8:15 in the morning. Same building he'd walked into 1,000 times before. Same marble floors. Same security guards who nodded at him by name. Same elevator with the sticky button on the 3rd floor. But something was different. He was different. Not broken. Not bitter. Not angry in the way people expected him to be. Just different. The way a man is different after he's been reminded of something he already knew but had allowed himself to forget. That the robe comes off. That the title goes away. That underneath all of it, to certain eyes, he would always be just another black man in a hoodie. He entered his chambers, hung his jacket on the hook behind the door, put on his robe, the same black robe he'd worn for 15 years, adjusted the collar, straightened the zipper, looked at himself in the small mirror on the wall. Same man, same face. New glasses, because the old ones were still cracked, sitting in a frame on the shelf behind his desk. That frame. He'd had it made the week after the incident. Simple black wood, museum glass. Inside it, his shattered reading glasses rested on a small white card. No inscription, no label. Just the glasses. One lens split down the middle, one arm bent at an angle that would never straighten. Every morning, before he took the bench, he looked at that frame. Not to remember the pain, not to feed the anger, but to remember why he sat in that chair, why the work mattered, why every case file that crossed his desk, every complaint of excessive force, every civil rights violation, every cry for justice from someone who had none, deserved more than a rubber stamp. It deserved his full attention, his full heart, his full weight. Denise visited him at the courthouse that afternoon, brought lunch in a brown paper bag, turkey sandwich, apple slices, a granola bar, the same brand. She set it on his desk without a word. He looked at it, looked at her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then she noticed the frame on the shelf, the cracked glasses behind museum glass. She stared at it for a long time. She didn't ask why he kept them. She already knew. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. And that was enough. Where are they now? Brett Callahan, serving 8 years at a federal correctional facility in southern Georgia. He filed one appeal. It was denied. He will be barred from law enforcement for life. His pension was revoked. His name became a case study in police misconduct training programs across the country. Officer Tony Russo cooperated fully with the federal investigation. His testimony was critical to the prosecution's case. He transferred to a community policing unit in Decatur, enrolled in a de-escalation training program, not as a student, but as an instructor. He told a local reporter that the day at the airport changed his life, that staying silent was the worst thing he ever did, that he'd spend the rest of his career making sure no one under his watch ever stayed silent again. Sandra Moore received a citizen commendation from the city of Atlanta. Her video, viewed over 40 million times, became evidence in the federal trial and a centerpiece of the national conversation about airport policing. Her daughter, now 16, wrote a school essay about what she witnessed that morning. The essay went viral on its own. It was titled, "The Woman Who Didn't Look Away." Captain Elaine Prescott, promoted to Deputy Chief of Airport Public Safety. She oversaw the implementation of new use of force standards, mandatory body cameras for all airport law enforcement, and an independent civilian review board. When asked by a journalist if the reforms went far enough, she said, "Ask me again in 5 years. If we haven't had another incident like this, I'll say yes." The Foster Act, signed into Georgia state law 4 months after the trial, named after Leonard Foster. The bill requires body-worn cameras for all airport police officers, independent investigation of every use of force incident, and automatic suspension without pay for any officer who applies a chokehold on a civilian. If you were standing in that airport lobby, watching a cop choke a stranger who hadn't done a single thing wrong, what would you do? Be honest. Drop your answer in the comments. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button so more people can see it. Subscribe if you want more stories where justice doesn't just get talked about, it gets served. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because authority without accountability isn't authority. It's tyranny. The badge doesn't make you right. The law does. And the law doesn't care what you look like. Leonard Foster didn't need his title to deserve respect. He deserved it the moment he stood in that line, just like every other person in that airport.
So justice was served. 8 years, match gone, law passed. done, but honestly, that's not what stays with me. What stays with me is this. Your dignity has a price tag, and that price tag is your title. The moment they opened that briefcase and saw federal judge, everything changed. Suddenly, he mattered. But 5 minutes before that, he was face down on a cold marble with me on his back. Same man, same heartbeat. The only thing that changed was what people found out about him. And that taught me something I'd never forget. We don't get to earn humanity, we're born with it. It's not a briefcase, it's not behind a title, it's not something you have to prove to a stranger who already decided who you are before you open your mouth. You don't need to be a judge to matter. You don't need to be a Sandra, somebody who doesn't look away. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be brave. You just have to not look away. Deep down, we all know which one we'd be. The question is, are we okay with that answer? Tell me what the story made you feel. Drop it below. Like this if you moved you. Subscribe if you are new. And share it because somebody out there is Leonard without the briefcase and they need to know they still matter. You don't need to be titled, deserve respect. You never did.